"Number 47, says the woman at the registration desk in the flat voice of someone who's said this 1,000 times. I raise my hand like I'm back in grade school, even though I'm 47 years old, and the only thing I want right now is to get out of this building without windows. The DMV branch on Pratt Street in Baltimore looks like the interior designer set out specifically to induce claustrophobia. Fluorescent lighting, rows of plastic chairs bolted to the floor, and the smell of coffee from a vending machine that costs $1.25 and tastes like a cross between water and regret.
48? The voice comes right after mine. I turn around. A woman, maybe 44, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, holding the same gray slip of paper with a number, just one higher than mine. She's got the look of someone who's already made peace with the rest of her day being shot. Guess we're neighbors in misery, I say, nodding at her number. 47 and 48. Sounds like the title of a bad sitcom. We sit down in adjacent chairs. Not because we planned it, it just worked out that way, since the rest of the row is already full of people who look like they've been sitting here since last week. 15 minutes later, a red message flashes above the counter. Technical difficulties. The system's down. A collective groan rolls through the room, almost in sync, like everyone here rehearsed this scene ahead of time.
"Well," I say, staring at the screen, "guess we're growing old together on these chairs." She laughs, short but genuine. "Joan," she says, holding out her hand. "Leonard." "Carpenter?" she asks, glancing at my hands. I look down. My palms give me away. Calluses, a scratch from a utility knife I never got around to bandaging properly. "Freelance carpenter. And you? Let me guess. Teacher?" "Librarian. But thanks for the compliment. I've been fishing for one all day." Outside the window that isn't a window, just the empty space in front of us, the clock on the wall reads 2 in the afternoon. The DMV employee announces over the intercom in the voice of someone who's given up fighting reality that the system should be back up shortly. And the phrase sounds so unconvincing I can't help but snort. "Shortly," I repeat. That's probably the same guy who says, "Be there in 5" and shows up in 40. Or a contractor promising to finish the job by the weekend. That's a suspiciously specific example for a random comment. She shrugs, and there's something in that gesture that tells me there's a story behind it, one she's not planning to share with a stranger in line just yet. I don't push. Instead, I glance at the guy sitting across from us, early 30s, dress shirt and sneakers, who's been trying to get someone on the phone for 20 minutes now, repeating, "No, I can't sign that right now. I'm at the DMV." "Suit and sneakers," I say quietly to Joan. Either he's rushing to something important after this, or he just gave up on getting fully dressed under the weight of bureaucracy. "Oh, we're playing a game now?" "What game?" "Guess the profession by the shoes. I play it every time I'm stuck in line longer than 20 minutes. Keeps me sane." She tips her chin toward an older woman at the end of the row, wearing spotless white orthopedic sneakers and a suit that looks like it cost more than my truck. That one definitely retired from some kind of management position. Sneakers are brand new, barely broken in, means she bought them specifically for the active lifestyle she was planning to start after retirement, and instead she ended up here. I look at her with newfound respect. "You're either extremely observant or you've read way too many detective novels on the job. Both. A librarian without a healthy dose of observation is just someone who alphabetizes books. The next half hour passes with this game. We take turns making up backstories for the people around us, and some of them are so ridiculous I'm laughing hard enough that the woman with the orthopedic sneakers shoots us a look of pure disapproval, which only gives us more material for the next round.
Joan's got a sharp tongue, but no bite behind it, the kind of sarcasm where you're laughing at the situation, not at people, and I catch myself realizing it's been a while since I sat somewhere and didn't notice time passing. At 3 o'clock, the system finally comes back to life, and the line starts moving again. They call number 45, then 46. I'm bracing to hear my number when I suddenly notice Joan digging through her bag with growing panic. "What's wrong?" "I grabbed the wrong document," she says, pulling a folder out of her bag. "This is my lease confirmation. I need proof of address with a utility bill, not this." 47, the woman at the counter calls out. That's me. I stand up, then look at Joan, who's already getting up too, clearly ready to go hunt down a cab and race home for the right paperwork, losing her spot in line for good. "Wait," I say. "I'll hold your place. Go, I'll tell them you'll be right back." "You're serious?" "Dead serious. Just so you know, if you're not back within the hour, I'm putting your number under my name and pretending we never met." She looks at me a second longer than a simple thank you to a stranger requires, like she's checking whether I'm joking or actually mean it. "1 hour," she says, "promise." And she takes off out of the building so fast that the orthopedic sneaker woman glances our way again, this time not with disapproval, but with open curiosity, like she just tuned into a show halfway through the season and needs to know what happens next. I walk up to the counter, give both numbers, mine and hers, and the clerk, sighing like I just asked her to retype the Constitution by hand, agrees to hold the spot 15 extra minutes past protocol. 15 minutes pass, then another 15. I'm already mentally rehearsing how to explain to a woman I've known for 2 hours that I lost her place in line when the front doors burst open and Joan comes flying in, out of breath, folder in one hand, 2 coffee cups in the other, one of which she immediately hands to me. "For your patience," she says, catching her breath, "and for not ditching me over a number." I take the coffee. And right at that moment, the clerk picks up the intercom again, checks her list, and calls out a name, not mine, not Joan's. "Leonard Hayes." I nod. "We just got a call from your previous employer regarding document verification. It looks like there's an issue with your address over the past 2 years. You'll need to step into a separate office." Joan looks at me, eyebrows raised, coffee cup frozen halfway to her mouth. "An issue with your address for 2 years?" she asks quietly. "Leonard, are you hiding something?" "I'm not hiding anything," I say, though my voice betrays a slight edge of uncertainty. "I honestly have no idea what this is about." The office they take me to turns out to be a tiny, windowless room with a desk and a computer that, judging by how long it takes to boot up, still remembers the era when the DMV ran on paper cards. The clerk, a young guy with a name tag that says Trevor, clicks around for a while, frowns, then suddenly breaks into the relieved smile of someone who just realized the problem isn't theirs. "Ah, there it is. The system duplicated your file. There are 2 Leonard Hayeses on record, one in Baltimore, the other, for some reason, listed in Baltimore County, off by 1 digit in the zip code. Technical glitch from today's outage. Let me fix that now." 3 minutes later, I walk out, living proof that bureaucracy sometimes just malfunctions on its own. Joan is waiting by the counter, clutching her folder of documents like she's afraid the system might come back and swallow it whole. "So, are you a fugitive or just a victim of bad software?" The second one, though the first would have made for a much better story at a bar. Shame, I'd already started mentally writing our joint police interview. We both finally get our new licenses, hers a minute before mine, and while I'm signing the last of my paperwork, she's standing by the exit, clearly in no hurry to leave.
It's obvious. Someone who actually wants to go doesn't linger by the door reading parking regulations she's already read twice. "Look," I say, walking up to her, "coffee's on me, not from the vending machine, the real stuff." "Is this compensation for me holding your spot in spirit while you were off getting interrogated by the system?" "This is compensation for making you worry about a stranger you've known for 3 hours." She narrows her eyes, like she's weighing something in her head, then nods.
"There's a place 2 blocks from here. Not Starbucks, something decent." The coffee shop turns out to be a small spot with a sign reading Charm City Roasters, where the barista knows the regulars by name, and the menu's written in chalk in handwriting that looks like whoever wrote it was late for something important. We take a table by the window, and for the first time all day, a silence settles between us that isn't filled with jokes about lines or paperwork. "So," I say, "a librarian who plays detective with strangers at the DMV. Tell me something I haven't already guessed." "Divorced 2 years. Live alone, except for a cat I honestly don't love as much as I pretend to in front of my neighbors. What about you?" "Third-generation carpenter. Divorced too, 3 years. Daughter, 22, in college in Ohio. Calls once a week, usually when she needs something." Classic. "Tell me about it." "Parenthood's when someone loves you conditionally, depending on whether you're willing to pay for textbooks."
She laughs, and there's none of the careful distance left in it that was there back in line. Something shifted over the last few hours, even though neither of us did anything special beyond just being decent company during a boring situation. "Can I ask something weird?" she suddenly says, turning her cup in her hands. "Go for it. Why did you actually offer to hold my spot? That's a dumb move, losing your own place for a stranger you're meeting for the first time." I think about it for a second, because the honest answer turns out simpler than I expected for myself. Because you looked like you were already having a rough week before the DMV even happened, and losing your spot in line would have been the last straw. I figured I'd rather stand there an extra hour than watch someone cry over a slip of paper with the number 47 on it. She's quiet for a few seconds, staring out the window, and I'm already thinking I said too much, when she says quietly, "It really was a rough week. Thanks for noticing." We don't dig into the details. She doesn't explain, and I don't ask. And it feels right, like we both understand some things aren't meant to come out over coffee that isn't even officially a date. The conversation keeps going, about work, about neighbors, about how Baltimore's simultaneously the best and worst city to live in, depending on the day. Turns out she lives 3 blocks from my shop, walks past my place every morning on her way to the bus stop, and we've probably crossed paths for years without ever noticing. That's almost insulting. All that wasted time, and we meet because a government system crashed? 21st century romance. Next time we'll meet over an ATM malfunction. We sit in the coffee shop until it starts getting dark outside, and when we finally step out, she stops at the corner where our paths split. "Hey," she says, "I've got my car's annual inspection coming up next week. Know any honest mechanic who won't try to sell me brake pads I don't actually need? I know a carpenter who can give you a list of trustworthy people, but honestly, I'd rather suggest something else." "Like what?" "Instead of a list of mechanics, give me your number and I'll drive you there myself. That way, I can also make sure they don't rip you off." She looks at me a beat longer than a simple friendly offer requires, like she's weighing whether this is really about the car or something else disguised as concern about her brakes. "Fine," she finally says, pulling out her phone. "But if it turns out you just want to keep playing Guess the Profession, I'll be disappointed." We exchange numbers, and she's already turning to leave when she suddenly stops, like she just remembered something. "By the way," she says, not turning all the way around, "that guy in the suit and sneakers we were talking about in line, I just saw him leaving the building while we were walking to the coffee shop." "And?" "He got into an ambulance. Turns out he's a paramedic who ducked into the DMV between calls." I freeze for a second, running through our entire detective analysis of that guy in my head. So our whole theory about the important business meeting? Completely wrong, she confirms, with a smile that clearly says this won't be the last time our read on people turns out to be catastrophically off. See you at the inspection, Leonard. She walks off down the street, and I stand at the corner a few minutes longer than necessary, watching her go, and thinking this is probably the first time in 3 years a day that was supposed to be wasted on bureaucracy ended up being something worth sitting through that line for. My phone buzzes in my pocket a second before I manage to head home. A text from an unknown number. It's Joan, in case you decide this whole day was a dream. See you Saturday. I look at the screen, grinning like an idiot on an empty street, when the phone buzzes again, an incoming call this time. The name on the screen makes the smile vanish instantly. It's my ex-wife calling, for the first time in 6 months. Leonard. My ex-wife's voice sounds exactly the way it did during the last few years of our marriage, tired, like every word costs her extra effort. Don't hang up, please. I wasn't going to, Caroline. What's going on? Emma called me today, says she can't afford textbooks this semester, and she doesn't want to tell you because Dad already works too much as it is. I sit down on the bus bench, the same one, as it turns out, that Joan's been walking past for years. The conversation with Caroline lasts about 10 minutes, short, almost business-like exchanges about money, schedules, who's got our daughter for the holidays. Nothing dramatic, no old grudges dragged back to the surface, just two adults who used to be married, now co-managing a life together, like two business partners who long since stopped harboring any romantic illusions about each other. Deal, I finally say. I'll call Emma myself, tell her not to be embarrassed to ask. Thank you. And Leonard, I'm sorry I only call when we need money. It's fine. At least I get an excuse to hear news about our daughter. I hang up, and for a few seconds I just sit there, staring at the empty street. The call didn't wreck anything. It just reminded me that life isn't made entirely of nice surprises in DMV lines, but also of college bills and phone calls that always end up a little heavier than you'd like. I pull out my phone and text Joan a short message. Confirmed it wasn't a dream. See you Saturday. Saturday comes faster than I expect. Joan's waiting outside her house right at 10, in jeans and a sweater that looks like it was made specifically for days when the only plan is a car inspection. Ready to trust a total stranger with a hammer? I ask as she climbs into my truck. You're a carpenter, not a bank robber. You got a hammer back there or a table saw? Both, if we're being honest. But today it's strictly a support role. My buddy Duke's shop sits on the edge of town, an old garage that smells like motor oil and coffee that, unlike the DMV, actually tastes like coffee. While Duke checks out her car, we sit on plastic chairs waiting, and Joan tells me about her failed marriage, not bitterly, but with the kind of humor that only shows up a few years after the pain, once you can finally laugh at your own mistakes. He left for a woman 12 years younger, she says. Classic. I honestly wasn't even offended by that. I was offended he took my favorite pot. A pot? A good one. Cast iron. 3 years I've been cooking in a crappy non-stick one, and every time I remember, I get freshly furious all over again. Want me to build you a cast iron-worthy trivet? Won't bring the pot back, but at least you'll have somewhere fancy to set the non-stick one out of spite. She laughs so hard Duke pokes his head out from under the hood to check that everything's okay. While we wait for the inspection results, the conversation naturally shifts from jokes to something deeper. She asks about my daughter, I ask about her job at the library, and I notice how easy it is to sit in silence with her between the lines,
without the usual awkwardness that comes from not knowing someone well enough yet. Duke comes back 20 minutes later with the news. The brake pads really do need replacing. Everything else checks out fine. See, I tell Joan while Duke gets the car ready, no rip-off, an honest mechanic, rare as a dinosaur. Thanks for bringing me to him specifically, and not to someone who would have sold me a new engine, new brakes, and possibly a kidney. Always happy to save someone's kidney. Once the car's ready, we stand in the shop's parking lot, and that same pause hangs between us that hung outside the coffee shop a week ago. The moment when both people realize the goodbye is stretching longer than a simple thank you requires. Listen, I say, I've got an order next week for furniture at a new cafe on Federal Hill. Need to spend half a day picking out lumber at the yard. It's about the most boring activity possible for anyone except me. Is that an invitation or a warning? Both. Want to come with? I promise a whole pile of sawdust and thrilling lectures on the difference between oak and ash. She looks at me, and there's no more of the cautious distance left from the DMV stranger, just something warmer, more familiar, like we've known each other far longer than the 1 week we actually have. Fine, she says, but only if you promise not to make me touch every single piece of wood and pretend I understand what I'm feeling for. Deal, though honestly, you'd probably catch on faster than half my clients. We climb into my truck. She takes the passenger seat without a second thought, like she's done it 100 times, not just twice in her life. I start the engine, and as we pull out of the shop's lot, she flips on the radio and immediately starts arguing with me about the station I picked, saying my music sounds like the soundtrack to a documentary about the lives of nails. A few months go by. The furniture order for the Federal Hill Cafe is long finished, and Joan, it turns out, really did learn the difference between oak and ash better than most of my actual clients. Duke knows her by name now, and always asks when she's bringing me back in for another inspection, because you two are decent company for my boring garage. Emma, home for winter break, meets Joan in my kitchen, right as she's trying to convince me why a cast-iron pot beats non-stick, and after a quick introduction, she steps into the hallway and quietly tells me, "Dad, you like her a lot more than you're letting on." I don't argue. One Tuesday, when I need to head to the state office to renew my contractor's license, I text Joan without even thinking about it. Heading back to the DMV, want to keep me company for old time's sake? She replies right away, no hesitation, on my way, bringing coffee, the real stuff, not the vending machine kind. We stand in the same line, under the same fluorescent lights, and when our turn comes up, the clerk at the counter looks at the two of us and asks if we're together. Technically, no, Joan says, without a moment's hesitation, but practically, we have been for a while now. I look at her, holding 2 coffee cups, one of which she handed me at the door without even asking, just knowing I'd want it. And I think that sometimes the best things in life don't start with pretty words or perfect moments, but with a bad number in line, a glitch in a government system, and someone who, for some reason, decides to wait an extra hour for a stranger holding ticket number 47.